So, picture this. You've just climbed a single flight of stairs and you're secretly panting, right?
Yeah, we've all been there.
You're like trying to hide it. Maybe you pull out your phone, pretending to check an email so nobody notices you gasping for air.
Right, trying to play it cool.
Exactly. And your brain immediately goes to that really judgmental place. You think, wow, my cardiovascular fitness is just completely terrible.
It's the universal conclusion we all jump to.
Yeah.
We instinctively equate that sensation of, feeling breathless with a fundamental lack of physical fitness.
Right. But what if your fitness isn't actually the problem? What if the real issue is that you literally fundamentally don't know how to breathe?
Clinically speaking, that assumption of being out of shape is very often a complete misdiagnosis of what is actually happening inside your biology.
And that counterintuitive idea is exactly what we're getting into today. Welcome to this deep dive.
It could be a good one.
It really is. We are unpacking some truly fascinating source material today, the provided document, which uncovers the hidden physiology of something you do like over 20,000 times a day.
Breathing.
Yeah, breathing. Our mission for this deep dive is to figure out why you might be experiencing what the clinical data calls a biochemical bottleneck.
Right.
And more importantly, we're going to look at how to fix it to unlock elite physical endurance. And spoiler alert, it has almost nothing to do with spending more hours sweating on a treadmill.
No, not at all. The goal here is to fundamentally shift your perspective on human energy.
Yeah.
We're going to tease apart the actual mechanical architecture of a breath.
Right.
Because that assumption that you're just out of shape, it's usually masking a very specific structural problem.
Which is chronic mouth breathing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you look at the physiological masterclass of human endurance, the mechanics are surprisingly precise. And most of us we're operating them completely backward.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we've established that feeling breathless isn't always a sign of poor cardio. So we really need to trace the exact physiological pathway of a correct breath versus an incorrect breath, just to see where this bottleneck is actually occurring.
That's the best place to start.
And according to the source material, it all starts with the hidden architecture of the nose?
Yeah, to understand why you run out of breath on those stairs, we have to look at a highly remarkable molecule called nitric oxide.
Nitric oxide, okay.
Right. When you take a breath in through your nasal passages, that air doesn't just, shoot straight down your windpipe.
It doesn't.
No, it's forced to pass through the paranasal sinuses. And these sinus cavities, they aren't just empty space in your skull.
Right, they actually do something.
They do a lot. They are actively and continuously producing a massive volume of nitric oxide gas.
Wow. So you basically have this internal gas manufacturing plant sitting right behind your face.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
But what does that specific gas do when it mixes with the air you're pulling in?
So it triggers a critical biological function known as vasodilation.
Vasodilation. Okay, break that down for us.
Sure. As you inhale that nitric oxide gas deep into your lower lungs, it goes to work expanding the smooth muscle of the airways themselves.
Oh, nice.
But more importantly, it expands the blood vessels surrounding the alveoli.
And those are the little sacs, right?
Exactly. Those are the tiny microscopic air sacs deep in your lungs where the actual transfer of gases happens.
So by expanding the blood vessels and, relaxing that smooth muscle, it's essentially taking a 2-lane road and widening it into a massive multi-lane highway.
That is exactly the mechanical advantage. It drastically increases the overall surface area available for oxygen to cross over from your lungs into your bloodstream.
That makes total sense.
Furthermore, nasal breathing naturally regulates both the volume and the speed of the incoming air.
Because the nose is a smaller opening than the mouth.
Right. It forces the air through a smaller passage, which slows things down just enough to give your lungs adequate time to extract the absolute maximum amount of usable oxygen from every single breath.
All right. The nasal advantage definitely makes sense to me, but let me push back on this a little bit.
Sure, go ahead.
Because the alternative mouth breathing is where the logic seems to flip completely upside down.
It does seem that way.
Yeah. The source material points out that chronic mouth breathing bypasses those paranasal sinuses entirely.
Completely bypasses them.
So you're taking cold, unfiltered air directly into delicate lung tissue, completely missing out on that nitric oxide.
And that, right there, is where the biochemical bottleneck begins.
But wait, if you open your mouth, you're obviously pulling in a significantly larger volume of air than you can through your narrow nasal passages.
You are pulling in more volume, yes.
So the paradox here is, when you breathe more air in through your mouth, You're actually absorbing less usable oxygen.
Yes.
How does that physically make sense?
It is a brilliant question.
Yeah.
And it really gets to the core of why so many people struggle with endurance.
Okay.
We naturally assume volume equals absorption. More air means more oxygen, right?
Right, that's what you'd think.
But because you bypass the nitric oxide, you don't get the vasodilation.
Oh, because the multi-lane highway is still just a 2-lane road.
Exactly. Your airways remain rigid and restricted. The blood vessels around those tiny alveoli aren't fully expanded.
Wow.
So you might be flooding your lungs with a massive chaotic volume of air, but the physiological surface area required to actually absorb that oxygen into the blood just isn't there.
So you're just like moving dead air around.
You're breathing heavier, working harder, but extracting less. It leads straight into a state of chronic low-grade hyperventilation.
Which brings us to a pervasive and, frankly, incredibly damaging mainstream myth.
Oh, absolutely.
Because this paradox directly debunks the most common piece of advice you hear in gyms, on sports fields, or even just when someone is having a panic attack.
The idea that when you're exhausted, you should take massive, deep, dramatic gulps of air through your mouth to get more oxygen.
Yes, you see people bend over with their hands on their knees, just vacuuming air through their mouths. The myth dictates that massive mouth breaths are the cure for physical exhaustion.
Clinically, it is physiologically backward.
Completely backward.
And the reason massive mouth breaths actually make you more exhausted is due to a mechanism known as the Bohr effect.
The Bohr effect. Okay, this is where the story shifts from oxygen being the hero to the completely misunderstood role of carbon dioxide.
Culturally, we've villainized carbon dioxide.
Oh, for sure. We think of it as toxic.
Right. We view it as toxic exhaust, a mere waste product that needs to be expelled from the body as aggressively as possible.
Just get it out.
But the Bohr effect reveals a completely different reality. When you take massive, rapid breaths through your mouth, you aren't just bringing in air.
You're blowing off CO2.
You're rapidly exhaling way too much carbon dioxide. You are completely blowing off your CO2 reserves.
And according to the source, carbon dioxide isn't just waste. It is the essential biological trigger that commands your red blood cells to actually release their oxygen into your brain and your muscles.
Yes. Without a sufficient level of CO2 in the blood, your red blood cells become greedy.
Greedy.
Yeah, the chemical bond between the hemoglobin and the oxygen tightens.
Oh, wow.
So your bloodstream might be completely saturated with oxygen the oxygen is literally inside your body.
Right.
But your muscles are physically starving for it because the red blood cells refuse to let it go.
That explains so much. I mean, that is why you feel dizzy and breathless at the top of the stairs.
Exactly.
You possess the oxygen, but your body's refusing to hand it over to the actual leg muscles that need it to climb.
You're quite literally hyperventilating your way into cellular exhaustion.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. The source material provides a metaphor to visualize this complex biological interaction, and I think it's brilliant. Let's walk through it.
I love this metaphor. Think of your body's cardiovascular system like a high-end premium delivery service operating in the middle of a bustling city.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
The oxygen that you breathe in, those are the crucial packages that need to be delivered.
Got it.
The hemoglobin inside your red blood cells, those act as the fleet of delivery trucks carrying these packages all over the city.
Okay, so the cells in my muscles and my brain, those are the customers eagerly waiting inside their houses for their packages so they can, produce energy.
Yes, perfect. But there's a massive catch in this delivery system.
Uh-oh.
The customers' doors are logged.
Of course they are.
The delivery trucks can arrive at the exact correct destination, but they cannot drop off the packages without a very specific key to open the door. And in your body, that key is carbon dioxide.
Wait. So if CO2 is the key to unlocking the muscle cells and I am panting through my mouth, blowing all my CO2 out into the gym.
What happens to the delivery trucks?
They're just driving past the house.
Exactly.
I have essentially rolled down the window of the delivery truck and chucked the keys into the street.
That's exactly what you're doing.
My trucks are filled to the absolute brim with oxygen packages. They're frantically circling the muscles in the brain, but they can't make a single delivery. I feel out of breath, not because I lack oxygen, but because I threw away the keys required to use it.
The absurdity of mouth breathing is mind-blowing when you really visualize the mechanics.
It really is.
Controlled nasal breathing works because it retains the optimal amount of carbon dioxide in your bloodstream. You are handing your delivery trucks the keys.
Right.
They arrive at the muscle tissues, they use the carbon dioxide key, unlock the door, and successfully deliver the oxygen.
And the result of those successful deliveries is like boundless physical endurance.
Which naturally raises the most important question for anyone listening.
How do I fix it?
Exactly. If your body is currently trapped in this inefficient locked door scenario, how do you change it? Knowledge is only valuable if we can apply it to our daily lives.
We need to know how to stop throwing the keys away.
Yeah.
And the source material doesn't leave us hanging. It actually lays out 3 precise, actionable protocols.
3 of them, yes.
And these are zero-cost behavioral shifts aimed at retraining the autonomic nervous system and your respiratory chemoreceptors.
Let's define those chemoreceptors quickly because they're basically the control center for this entire process.
Good idea.
They are the chemical sensors in your brainstem that constantly monitor your carbon dioxide levels.
Okay.
When CO2 rises, these sensors trigger the urge to breathe. For most modern people, these sensors are far too sensitive. We have to recalibrate them.
Make them less panicky.
Exactly. And Protocol 1 targets the time when you're most vulnerable to mouth breathing. Nocturnal nasal tape sealing.
Okay, hold on. Taping your mouth shut while you sleep.
Yes.
My immediate thought, and I'm sure anyone listening is thinking the exact same thing, is what if I have a stuffy nose? Am I just going to suffocate in the dark?
It is the most common fear. But physiologically is a misunderstanding of how the body clears the airway.
Really?
Yeah. When you force nasal breathing, the buildup of nitric oxide actually acts as a powerful decongestant. It reduces inflammation in the nasal passages naturally. Now, the clinical rationale for taping is undeniable. You simply cannot optimize your waking endurance if you spend 8 hours every single night hyperventilating through your mouth while you sleep.
Right. Because mouth breathing at night doesn't just dry out your mouth, it actively ruins your sleep architecture.
It does. When your jaw drops open and your airway partially collapses, your brain senses a drop in oxygen and a disruption in CO2.
And it panics.
It thinks you're suffocating. In response, it spikes your cortisol levels, your primary stress hormone, to yank you out of deep restorative sleep or REM sleep, just enough to make you take a gasp of air.
So you spend the entire night in a low-grade state of fight or flight.
Exactly.
So the action here is simple. Apply a small vertical strip of porous medical tape across the center of your lips before going to sleep.
Right, just a small strip.
It's not about forcefully sealing your lips like a hostage situation. It acts as a gentle physical barrier, a subconscious biofeedback mechanism. When your jaw tries to drop open at night, the slight tug of the tape trains your muscles to remain closed.
The result is that you wake up with significantly more energy, a dramatic reduction in morning brain fog, and a daily baseline of elevated nitric oxide because you've been manufacturing it in your sinuses all night long.
Which sets a perfect foundation for Protocol 2. The Zone 2 nasal-only cardiovascular constraint.
This is the big one.
This takes the nasal breathing out of the bedroom and subjects it to the stress test of an actual workout.
The action here is strict limitation. During your next cardiovascular session, whether you're jogging, cycling, or just taking a brisk walk, you must strictly limit your breathing to your nose.
Period.
Do not open your mouth.
Now, the source explicitly warns that this is going to feel incredibly restrictive for the first few weeks.
Oh, it will.
You will likely need to slow your physical pace down significantly, which ego-wise is tough for a lot of people when they get on a treadmill next to someone else.
It requires checking your ego, absolutely. But let's look at the evolutionary biology of why your brain hates this restriction.
Okay, let's hear it.
Throughout human evolution, a rapid buildup of carbon dioxide usually meant you were in grave danger. Maybe you were trapped under something or drowning.
Right, an actual emergency.
So your brain is evolutionarily wired to panic when CO2 rises. By forcing yourself to maintain nasal breathing during a jog, you are effectively performing neuroplastic resistance training for your respiratory system.
You're teaching your brain's alarm center to calm down and tolerate the CO2 keys.
Precisely.
And the rule of thumb from the source is simple. If you feel the absolute desperate need to open your mouth to breathe, you are moving too fast. You have to slow down.
Over a matter of weeks, the adaptation is profound. Your chemoreceptors desensitize. Your tolerance to carbon dioxide improves, your blood vessels dilate more effectively under stress, and your physical endurance skyrockets, all without needing to pant.
I see where you're going with this. And if you want to actively accelerate that desensitization, that brings us to Protocol 3.
The carbon dioxide tolerance apnea walk.
Right. This is a targeted exercise to actively reset that panic alarm in your brain.
To perform the apnea walk, you start by standing in a safe, open area. You take a normal, quiet breath in through your nose, followed by a normal quiet breath out through your nose.
Okay.
At the absolute bottom of that exhalation, you pinch your nose with your fingers so you're holding your breath on empty.
Holding on the exhale, so you really have no reserve.
Then you begin walking at a normal pace. You count exactly how many paces you can take before you feel a moderate, definitive hunger for air.
Just counting steps.
Right. Now, the source is very clear about the safety parameter here. Do not push this to the point of extreme stress, spasming, or dizziness. The goal is a moderate, uncomfortable air hunger, not passing out.
Right, safety first. And once that definitive urge to breathe hits, you let go of your nose, but you immediately resume calm breathing strictly through your nose.
Yes, that's crucial.
You don't want to gasp through your mouth and ruin the adaptation. Wait for 1 minute to recover and repeat the process 5 times. But what is physically changing in my brain when I do this?
You're tapping into neuroplasticity. By repeatedly exposing your brainstem to a safe, controlled spike in CO2, the chemoreceptors learn to delay their panic response.
Oh.
You are literally rewiring your nervous system to understand that a buildup of CO2 does not equal an emergency. If we connect this to the bigger picture, these 3 protocols are not just trendy biohacking tricks.
They're much deeper than that.
You are retraining your deeply ingrained survival reflexes to serve your endurance rather than sabotage it.
It's incredible how adaptable our physiology is when we stop fighting it and give it the right inputs.
It really is.
Now, to truly synthesize everything we've just uncovered, the source material anchors this science in specific clinical vocabulary. It maps the journey of a breath. We start by optimizing that nasal pathway, right?
Yeah.
Because that is the only way to trigger the nitric oxide gas. For example, to maximize his physical performance during the marathon, he maintained a strict nasal breathing rhythm.
Spot on. Which then flows down and relaxes the smooth muscle to keep the entire airway completely open and unobstructed, so you could say.
Oh.
The production of nitric oxide helps to relax the smooth muscle and naturally open the airway.
Perfect. And maintaining that open airway doesn't just mean sucking in a higher volume of dead air. It allows for the actual efficient absorption of oxygen into the bloodstream. Like the red blood cells transport vital oxygen to the muscles during intense physical exercise.
Right. But the real secret we've learned is that we only get to use that oxygen if we keep our mouth shut to retain the CO2 keys. When you achieve that biochemical balance, you are no longer just surviving your environment.
No, you're thriving.
You're building foundational physical health and unlocking a level of true, sustainable endurance that a mouth breather simply cannot physically match.
Right, like her cardiovascular endurance improved drastically once she stopped breathing through her mouth.
Exactly. And to wrap up the vocabulary, proper hydration and respiratory control are essential foundations for optimal physical health.
So what does this all mean? If we step back and look at the core philosophy of this deep dive, it is about a fundamental shift in how you operate as a human being.
A total paradigm shift.
Shifting from the chaotic emergency state of mouth breathing to the precise, structured flow of nasal breathing. When you take your mouth or restrict your breathing on a run, you're doing so much more than just taking in air.
You are.
You are sending a distinct biochemical signal to your autonomic nervous system, to every single cell in your body, that you are safe, that you are efficient, and that you are ready to endure.
It is the ultimate transition from unconscious panic to mechanical precision.
It really is. And that leads to a final thought I want to leave you with today. The source material highlights how incredibly rapidly our bodies can adapt when we simply fix our breathing mechanics in the present moment.
It's remarkably fast.
But consider the broader, long-term evolutionary picture for a second.
Okay.
If modern stressors, digital anxiety, and highly sedentary indoor lifestyles have subtly trained us into this perpetual state of chronic, low-grade hyperventilation, where we are constantly, unconsciously throwing away our carbon dioxide keys, could consciously reclaiming our nasal breathing be the most fundamental way to reverse modern physiological devolution?
That is a profound question.
It is definitely something to ponder the next time you take a breath.
Or the next time you find yourself standing at the bottom of a flight of stairs.
Exactly. Keep those lips sealed, hold on to your keys, and let your physiology do what it was designed to do.